Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session that's called In the Mood for the Peaceful Future, Part 2, where we're going to be talking about on the ground practices towards peace building from true artisans of peace. And while we welcome in other people into the space, could you please share in the chat what's your name, where you're calling from? That will help us to understand how uniting we are from different parts of the world. And I will pass the word to Pavel Luksha, who will be moderating this session. Pavel is our long-lasting partner of the Learning Planet Institute and also founder and director of Global Education Futures. Pavel, I'll let the floor to you, here to help, as usual.
Thank you, Ilya, and welcome everyone. I'm glad that you call me a long-lasting partner because it's the long day of sessions on peace and practices of peaceful futures. So I'm long-lasting moderator today in a way. I think it's already 5 hours of moderation by the end of this session. And welcome everyone. I lead an organization called Global Education Futures. We've been researching different aspects of what education should be in the transforming world. And the topic of peace has been coming up consistently and increasingly so. Uh, Thank you, Olivier, for endorsing me. Um, and I already mentioned this statistic in a few sessions that um, according to multiple organizations that are tracking conflicts around the globe, they give different numbers of how many conflicts are actually happening, but they all unanimously agree that the number of conflicts is indeed increasing, and the scale of these conflicts is increasing. And yeah, we had heard some good news about the possible kind of winding down of the conflict in Israel and Palestine, which gives a lot of hope. But uh, even so, systemically, problems that led to this conflict remain in the region. And of course, if we look more broadly, there are lots of potential conflicts that can unwind in the future. And why this may represent serious risk is, first of all, reasons for conflicts are increasing. There is more fracturing between people in our society. There is more tension. There is more separation, social inequality, and issues that, even as we hope that social media would actually help us understand each other, they actually amplify those differences. And technological change, which is supposed to bring us hope and prosperity, also amplifies some of these inequalities and separates human societies. And the issues of our relationship with the planet, climate change, and biodiversity loss are among the greatest strategic risks that can create massive conflicts as um, climate-related migration continues to increase. So uh, let's see, the 21st century might see some of the great conflicts. The danger of these conflicts is obvious because as humanity, we possess some of the uh, most, let's say, dangerous, most lethal weapons ever created. And the risk that some of these conflicts can spiral out into a total annihilation cannot be removed. It actually gets higher. So we should be serious about the future of peace building, and because of this, we probably need to change the paradigm, not just to see it as a conflict resolution, but see it as a journey to a cultural transformation, a journey to the civilization that will not require wars, will normalize peace and move into society that is able to resolve tensions and conflicts by constructive means. So that hopeful future is not there yet, but for example, David, who will speak today, thinks that we should be bold and say that we can achieve it in even in very foreseeable future by 2030. We need to think in those terms. We need to make that dream come true and make it come true fast. So let's explore what kind of practices are able to carry us towards this practice, and most importantly, why we hold this session, because we discussed earlier today that a lot of things that should happen we already know. We know the principles, we know the approaches, we know the best models of learning. They should have to be experiential, they have to be participation based, they have to empower young people, and so on and so on. But most important is, what do we do? What do we practice? So focusing on practices that amazing panelists of the session today will speak about, scaling those practices up, transforming them so they can be tuned to local circumstances and local uh, culture is the way forward. Um, I'm going to introduce the first round of participants as we go. I'm going to introduce them one by one. And we have about 5 to 7 minutes in the first round of conversation for each speaker, so that we will have more opportunity for interaction and reflection on each other's words. And I would like to highlight that every listener of this session is also a participant. So I encourage you to make your comments in the chat, to use it for sharing links, sharing your statements, and asking provocative questions to the panelists so that we can get the conversation flowing. And I'll make sure that your thoughts and your questions will be represented in this panel. So let us begin, and I'd like to begin by welcoming Catalina Koch-Duke, who is the founder and the president of Fundación Mi Sangre. And not only that, Catalina, you are doing a lot of amazing social entrepreneurship projects across Latin America. But your work with Mi Sangre is probably one of really the hallmarks of what you do. And I'm not going to explain what you do. I hope you will tell it better than me. But your work with young people, with empowerment, with use of art, I find it very holistic approach that we probably should see as one of the models of what can be done in this cultural transformation that we hope to bring. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pavel, and hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. Well, at Mi Sangre Foundation, we've been working for the past 18 years to unlock young people's potential to contribute to more peaceful, democratic, and regenerative societies. Of course, our model has evolved throughout the year, learning from what we've been doing on the ground. We started by creating leadership programs with a strong focus on social-emotional development skills towards peace building. But as we have grown, we have understood the importance of working with a systems change approach, involving all the actors that influence the life experience of young people. I don't know if there's a presentation. Maybe if we can go to slide 3, please. I would like to explain that, first of all, we work in 3 different ecosystems in parallel in the same territories. One is within the school system, outside within the community level, and something that we call multi-sectoral ecosystem, where we bring different actors to align towards a shared vision. And we've also understood that training and developing leadership skills and empowering young people wasn't enough, that we really needed to go a step further, not only to develop those individual capacities, but to make or to achieve transformational relational transformations. And that means investing in connecting these young people with a wider ecosystem, with decision makers, with NGOs, with peers, with the media, to enhance their social capital to be able to transform their own reality. And also going a step further, and it's that as part of our training programs, we support the incubation of change initiatives to ensure that they influence decision makers, that they create long-lasting projects that can transform reality towards peace building. Of course, this initiative differs, depending on which ecosystem we're working. At the school level, we have initiatives working towards bullying prevention, towards discrimination, to promote peaceful coexistence, to create awareness about gender-based violence, different kinds of issues that young people choose. The community level, it can vary from the creation of a hip hop school created even by ex-armed gang members to prevent the risks of the streets for young people, but also initiatives for leaders who have gone through a different, through a stronger path to influence decision makers in different areas. And I'll explain a little bit about the multi-stakeholder ecosystem, which is an evolution where we're starting to work with very diverse actors, because as young people were pushing towards more complex problems, etc., we understood the relevance or the importance of bringing all the actors that influence that challenge to work collaboratively. So I'd like to share a short video. Next slide, please. Just to listen to one of the young leaders in his own voice, as I'm sure he can explain much better what happens in our programs.
Para construir una paz comunitaria, primero tenemos que construir una paz personal, una paz familiar, para poder llegar a impactar desde el territorio. Por eso creemos que esas nuevas formas de construcción de paz no solamente se fijan en lo comunitario, sino en lo personal. Cómo la paz mental se introduce en mi vida como un mecanismo también para protección personal, pero también para respetar los derechos y los deberes que tienen los demás como sociedad. Nuestra iniciativa se llama Tejedores Juveniles del Chocó, una estrategia para la reconstrucción sociocultural, la diversidad y la etnicidad. Este espacio precisamente estuvo enfocado en 4 ejes temáticos fundamentales. El primero, construcción de paz y las nuevas formas de construir paz en los territorios. Segundo, hablar desde la ancestralidad y el medio ambiente, hablar de la equidad de género como medio fundamental para la participación de mujeres. Sentimos que el poder de la mujer es trascendental para tomar decisiones en un espacio. Y por último, hablar de cómo la unión y la perseverancia que nosotros tenemos como jóvenes en los territorios puedan convertirnos en agentes de cambio. Trabajar desde lo comunitario, entender sus situaciones, sentarnos con ellos y verlos progresar, verlos mirar nuevas formas de vida y creer en sus propósitos de vida ha sido fundamental para acabar con todas esas barreras que existen. La fundación precisamente se llama Mi Sangre, pero yo ya siento que esas personas que hacen parte del programa ya son mi sangre, ya son parte de mi vida, ya son parte de mi propósito como persona y como líder. El fellowship ha sido...
Thank you. Of course, I would love to share it all, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I just want to share that examples. We have examples like his all over the country, and the young people who go through our programs can join a national network of young peace builders. So that ensures sustainability over time and collaboration, and even without too much support of the foundation of my organization, they keep collaborating and promoting other peace building initiatives. And it's really powerful where something like this is happening in the territory. Many young people creating their own initiatives with respect to what they really care, to how they understand the territory, etc. And at the same time, we have initiatives at the multi-sectoral level. Please, next slide. Such as this one that emerged from a collaboration.
Para construir una paz comunitaria.
such as this one, where we were collaborating among very diverse actors to prevent youth-based violence. And we brought together ex-combats, victims, young people, the police, very diverse actors. And as a result, one of the initiatives was to create a retreat right after we signed the peace agreement in Colombia, a retreat with, again, ex-combats, victims, like people who were strongly affected by violence. And we experienced for the first time the possibility to go through a reconciliation process that really transformed the lives and the trust building among people who couldn't talk among them. This was only one of the initiatives that emerged, but I want to highlight the importance of working among different actors, not only because of the results it can bring in terms of collaborations and bringing different capacities towards a shared objective, but also because of the opportunity to see each other as human beings, members of the same, or to understand our interconnectedness and to rebuild trust and the social fabric of our country. Next one. And this is a final example. I think I forgot to mention the fourth strategy of that. What we do is running mobilization and advocacy campaigns. This was a project that was implemented also after the peace agreement, or even after the publishing or releasing of the legacy of the report of the Truth Commission. And of course, it's really important. It's a milestone to have such a report, but we needed to ensure its legacy, to ensure that people understood and embraced what this report offered us as a society, to understand what happened to us, why did it happen, the responsibilities among different actors, and also to highlight the forms of resistance and resilience from the civil society, because Colombia has been very strong in that sense. This was really important to ensure non-repetition. Of course, this is a long-term bet, but we managed to involve young people all over the country to mobilize, to create campaigns and awareness about this report. And we managed to reach almost 2 million people through this campaign, creating awareness and at the same time giving the opportunity to young people to participate and to express themselves in relation to this important report. Last one, please. Next one. Just to finalize some of the numbers we have reached, but I could talk much more about how we measure this in the different levels, individual, transformation, and structural. And we have the last one, a very broad reach all over the country. And that allows us to have, like we say, little feet on the ground to be able to connect and run collaborative projects country-wise. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Catalina. Every time I listen to your story, I'm amazed how systemic it is and how it shows that education is an entry point to system-level social change, where you can actually you sort of build up the what we discussed in the earlier discussion is the space of coherence, social coherence, from which many other actors can be involved. So in a way, education is more than just education. It's a space for dialogue. It's a space for mutual understanding. It's a space for transforming the culture. I think your work manifests it beautifully. So thank you very much for this, and we'll have opportunity to interact more in the next round. I want to move to our second panelist and invite David. I already mentioned your work a little bit, but what also amazes me, David, in your work is that you created an approach that, in my mind, can actually help people of all ages manifest the cultural change that leads to peace. And again, I won't tell about your work. I hope you will explain it much better than me. But I think what you do is an example of how we can create this approach that is invitational to join the cultural transformation rather than to impose it and so on and do it voluntarily, but in an exciting way. So welcome, and please share the approach that you conduct.
Thank you, Pavel, and Catalina, beautiful work. I look forward to learning more about it. So congratulations. So I want to start with our vision, which is a moonshot vision. And the moonshot is peace on earth by 2030. Peace on earth by 2030. So I've been in Davos the last week sharing this idea with a lot of people, and it has been well received. It's been well received in general, but it's been very well received here by people who are holding aspiration for big ideas to be born. So let me tell you a bit of the backstory so that I can put some grounding underneath this large idea. And I'll start with a little history of my history. It began in 1976, and it was the 200th birthday of America. And I was inspired to pass a torch around America to rekindle the values upon which the country had been founded, but which had gone astray with this Vietnam War experience we had just come through. And it went 9,000 miles of nonstop running, and it touched something within people. It touched something transcendent. It was mythic. It was passing fire, literally, from person to person. And when I was extinguishing this torch in New York City, the place where our first president was inaugurated, George Washington, Federal Hall, I got this download. And the download was spiritual download, whatever you want to call it, inspiration. Pass the torch around the world to create the spirit of cooperation and peace on earth. And it was such a big idea, it overwhelmed me, but I set out to see if I could make that happen. And I was very unsuccessful for many, many years. And I was at the end of my belief that such an idea could be born when I got a phone call from the Olympic Committee and said, would you organize the Olympic torch relay for the 1980 Olympic Games, which I did. And I had another experience of the power of this fire. And I thought maybe that was the way this idea was supposed to happen. But in fact, it wasn't ready yet to be born. There was another moment which was more pregnant for change, and that was 1983, Pavel, where our countries were in this nuclear showdown, and we were trying to find a way around what was called at the time mutually assured destruction. And so we set out to pass the torch of peace around the world, and we succeeded. And we engaged through the media, ABC television, and many other partners. 1 billion people witnessed the torch of peace. President Gorbachev, President Reagan, and 45 other leaders participated in engaging their countries and other world leaders to participate. 62 countries, 25 million people on the ground. And wherever the torch of peace went, all war stopped and the world was united as one. And I was given a sense of the possible. And I've never been the same since. But I realized the symbolic event was not going to get the job done by itself as much as it inspired people. And so I realized I had a lot more learning to do. And I set out. I don't think it was this deliberately. It sounds more deliberate 40 years later, but certainly I realized I had to learn a lot to learn. I had to learn behavioral change. I learned how to scale behavioral change. I had to learn how to empower communities. I had to learn how to design tipping point strategies where little efforts can have large impacts. I had to learn the science of large system transformation. So fast forward, 5 years ago, we launched this initiative, Peace on Earth by 2030. And we now have had 21 countries participate in it. And it's based on a thing we call the peace game. And the peace game is 7 actions that come out of the learning experience from the first Earth Run that allowed it to be successful. And we have had those 21 countries include about 2,500 people playing the peace game who've influenced close to 1.2 million people in probably about 25 different cities. So with that said, let me share with you a little bit of this app we've built, the Peace Game app, so you can get a sense of what this is and why we think it's possible for such an audacious idea to actually have impact. If I may share screen. Right. Can you see the app? Yeah. So these are the 7 actions. Let me walk you through the 7 actions, and let me take you in depth with one action, and then explain how it goes to scale. And I'll stay on point with time. So the first action is around empowerment, which is the core of the work that our institute's been doing for some 4 decades, which is building the capacity for individuals to be agents of change. And that is action 1 of the Peace Game. Actions 2, 3, and 4, oneness, unity, and cooperation, are the peace building acts. So what we're building is not just new mindsets, but new skill sets and new abilities to engage people in actually taking direct action in their lives. So oneness action is about befriending the other. Who is it that you've othered in your life? And that's where you play the game. So it is not a game that is easy to play because it asks you to grow and learn and change. But people like the challenge and the transformational benefit that it gives them. Action 3 is about celebrating our common humanity, looking for that which we share with others as opposed to how we separate ourselves. And again, we're showing humanity how to come into a new relationship with each other. Action 4 is what we call cooperation, which is learning how to cooperate with others for the common good. What's the common good we could achieve? Those 3 actions are the core of the peace building actions. And then we move into actions 5 and 6, which we call the field building actions. Action 5 is engaging people to support organizations that are furthering oneness, cooperation, and unity with their time and their money. And action 6, we call it love. It's a version of love that Greeks call agape love, which is praying for and visualizing peace on earth. So the power of intention, power of visualization. What you'll see here is pretty much the full suite of how people have been thinking about and acting on peace indefinitely. Indefinitely. For a long time. I don't think that was the right word I was using. And then action 7 is on faith, and faith that we can create peace on earth, faith that we can create peace in our world, faith in ourselves, faith in our fellow human beings. And this is also where people engage others to play the game. And I just lost my app. Let me take one moment. Sorry about that technical thing. I'm on a computer that I don't have as much facility in, but I'll get us back into the app. Hopefully it'll show up again. Can you see it on the screen again? Or do I have to share screen? It's good, okay. So what I want to share now is a deeper dive into one of the actions, the oneness action. So you see how the game works. So this act.
Maybe just if you can do it in the next 2-3 minutes, it would be good because we need to move the session. We'll have a second round of conversation if something is.
I'll stop. I'll just give them. I'll complete it in 2 minutes. Thank you for the feedback. So this action is about befriending those who are different from you. Then it has the different types of people you can befriend. It tells the story of our journey with oneness from the first Earth Run. It gives you a sense. We partnered with ABC Television. It tells that story. There's a meditation that people learn how to do. They plan their actions, and these give them the game plan for how to do it, befriending the other. Bronze, peace medals 1 to 3, and goes on. This is the action plan you create. You take the action, and you do this in teams of 3 over 9 meetings, 2 hours a week. The next game starts actually Wednesday, and then you share. And in the sharing, you share what you learned and you put it into the app, and it records what was done. And this is the scoreboard, which just keeps score. And it shows you how many people have played and how many people have taken the different peace actions, action by action. So that's the peace game. I'll say more about our strategy for scaling it, but let me stop there.
Yeah, because actually scaling up would be part of my question for you to you and others in the second round of conversation. But thank you
Perfect.
so much, David. And if you can put the link to the game in the chat, perhaps participants of the session can also be interested to
Yes.
join your cohort as the game starts next week.
Yes.
Thank you, and I find it amazing that you bring this news from Davos, that more people that are decision makers, that are funders, that are politicians want to subscribe to the bold vision that you hold, the moonshot vision of peace by 2030. And we can argue about the timeline, whether it will be achieved in 2030 or 2035 and so on. But like the bold vision, I think should be there, and we should not compromise. So moving in that direction is absolutely important. And I'd like to bring in the next panelist, Paula Druin, as if I pronounce your name correctly. And Paula, your work in ADR Learning Institute, you are a mediator, but you're also a leader in restoration practices. And today, in earlier sessions, the idea of, first of all, restoring justice in a relationship with indigenous communities has been called as one of really essential aspects of systemic peace building that needs to happen and promoting the peace culture, and also recognizing the value of indigenous worldview, which embraces all forms of life and recognizes the need for dialogue. So I imagine over 25 years of practice in this space, you have learned a lot, and I'm only naming one of the aspects of what you do. So welcome, and please share the practices that you conduct. And thank you for joining us earlier this morning at 3 a.m. to connect with the first part of this conversation. It's been, yeah, kind of endeavor of its own. Welcome.
Thank you, Pavel. And thank you, Learning Planet, UNESCO, for the opportunity to participate in this. For me, I've been hearing from a lot of speakers who are part of large organizations and big international movements. So I was thinking, oh no, they're going to be disappointed they brought me in. And then I realized that my perspective is of a woman who just grew up in the military, overhearing conversations about peacekeeping, and ended up working in all-male maximum security jail when I was in my 20s and 30s, in charge of the education programs, and then went to work in the inner city after that for 9 years, really working with people on parole and probation, and then heard about restorative justice and was instrumental in working with a group of people to make restorative justice victim offender dialogue available in the city I'm living in. And that also led to being invited by Native Counseling Services of Alberta to create what was then called the Aboriginal Peacemaking Program. It's now called the Bear Paw Peacemaking Program. And it was really to empower Indigenous court workers, family court workers, criminal court workers, and people responsible for housing and family programs within Indigenous communities, and it was for Indigenous people, to really connect with how to start healing their communities and resolving the conflicts within the communities, and how to be really strong advocates for their own people that were going through the court system, whether through family or criminal court. So, and that program, when we first created it, it was in partnership with York University as a postgraduate program. And they wanted to send out all these very academic papers and have the people do essays midway through the training and comparative analysis essays. And I thought, no, we want to train the people from the community who community members naturally go to when they are needing help with disputes or conflicts within the community. And if we send out all this pre-reading, they're never going to show up for class. So I said, I'm not going to be involved in this. I don't agree with it. And so it was the the dean of sociology that I was in these talks with. And so he invited me back and he said, Paula, honestly, I don't care. We do need to know that they understand the difference between different processes and which ones will work best in which situation. But they can drum it, they can sing it, they can dance it, as long as you see evidence that they do know how to compare different processes and select the one that's going to meet the needs of their clients best or their group best or the type of work they're doing best. And so then I got back re-engaged and created the program. It's been running now for 26 years. And it's really grown. About 15 years ago, we got tired because I included a component that taught interest-based negotiation, which is the Harvard model of mediation, because they wanted the students to be able to apply for national designations. And in order to get a national designation in Canada, you have to demonstrate that particular model, which is a very colonial model. So about 15 years ago, we said, this is crazy. They are never going to use that process. And it's painful that at the end of all their other training, we're subjecting them to having to do this very linear process that doesn't suit them culturally. It doesn't suit the communities they're working in. And so, and we made the decision that we were going to stop trying to get the national body to recognize our graduates, and just we would design the program and deliver the program to meet their needs and the needs of the people they'd be working with. And so we started changing it then, and then we made another really big change to it a couple of years ago, where we've incorporated much more restorative justice practices and circle processes and teaching them how to facilitate those, and healing circles. And we always work, there's always a elder that's working with me. And the way the training is taught is, so within these communities, and we're often delivering it to people from different Indigenous tribes, and they have different customs. And so, I mean, one tribe might use a talking stick, others will use a talking feather, and others will use a stone, others. And so there's a lot of negotiation between them on, and in every class we start with, how do you facilitate a circle? Some of them leave an opening in the circle so that the ancestors can come and go, and others keep the circle closed. And if there's an empty chair, they remove it. And then other students would go, oh, you can't remove the chair. My grandmother might be sitting in that chair. And so it's always a living, breathing, the process and how it's delivered is being created by the needs of the participants. And I think that's my biggest practice. I think that peace starts with the individual. And so within ADR learning, our courses are really, as peace starts with me. If I'm at peace with myself, it's easier to create peaceful relationships. And then it's easier to create peaceful communities, families, communities, and expands from there. And so I'm really big in creating programs that start with helping people get comfortable with conflict and who are you in conflict. So you're not avoiding or fighting all the time, that you're feeling confident to have a conversation and talk about it, because the next piece is having a dialogue with a person you're in conflict with. It's also identifying the difference between conflict and violence so that they clearly know, if it's unsafe, then don't try this piece. So we also teach negotiation skills. The mediator training is recognized by the International Mediations Institute, and it's offered online. So we now have students from all over the world taking that. And again, with we're customizing it. We're teaching it in a very experiential way, even though it's online, so that the students can talk about whether this process would work within their community. And I spend a lot of time focusing on mediator presence, because anybody can learn a model. But how do you personally show up? How do you hold space to make it safe for people to have very difficult conversations? With the Bear Paw Peacemaking Program, we decided that we were going to wait. And if the national body that recognizes mediators someday would come to us and say, how can we recognize? And just last week that happened. So I might tear up talking about this. Because like David said, it's a lifetime journey and it's a little bit at a time. But I got a call last week that they said, we've decided to make membership in the association free to people who identify as Indigenous. But now we're trying to figure out a way to recognize their qualifications as a peace builder. And so would you be part of a committee to help us decide how we can do that? I hosted a World Mediation Summit last June, and the subline was marginalized no more. And the whole point of it was really to say, please, the bodies that recognize people who do such important work have got to find a way to let all of the various different ways. We have a lot of African graduates, alumni, and so it's always how can we just recognize the amazing skills? Because the real work is done on the ground. I've delivered mediation training in Bosnia and introduced restorative justice there. I've worked in northern Uganda, and it's just, this is such important work, and it doesn't have, and I don't ever want it to be some international body that says, oh, only these people get to be peace builders, because it's the moms in the communities and the older siblings or the youngest one in the family or the middle child that goes, okay, enough, you guys, stop with the fighting. And so I remember one day being on a phone call with my niece, and they were living in another city at the time, and I was speaking to my grandniece who was 5, and all of a sudden she just a minute, Auntie Paula. And she moved the phone away from her face and she said, Mom and Dad, would you stop yelling at each other? I'm trying to talk on the phone here. And I thought, okay. And she's actually now 20 years old, and she was in a course this week in the comfort and conflict course that we're operating. So I thought, yeah, that was a little peace builder in the making. So I think for me, that's the practices, is it starts with the individual, and then it's how does your presence make a difference? Whether you're trained, and you don't have to, like, I've been on this journey, just a woman in Canada with a passion for this. And we now have amazing instructors and coaches in the program, and people from all over the world are signing up. And I have not completely sure how they find us, but there's lawyers and teachers and consultants and moms that have been moms and they want to re-enter the workforce, or there's people from foreign affairs in the US and in Canada that have done our training. And then they go off, and so many new immigrants that are creating programs within their communities in whatever city they're living in, and teaching the skills to people within their communities and creating programs. So I'm really just a seed planting into a whole bunch of brains, and they're going out and doing the great work, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Paula, for your amazing work, and thank you for bringing this wonderful news that there is a recognition of Indigenous peace builders that happens, and congratulations on this. And yes, the themes that you are raising have also been raised in earlier sessions today, and especially how how we need to decolonize this space, how we need to allow the indigenous perspective flow into the space, and to make sure that if we come to these learning spaces, not imposing what we think is right and wrong, but rather with a sense of curiosity and the sense of respect, how much more we can learn from each other. So thank you for doing that. And against, let's say, against many odds, as I think with other participants in the session today. And let's explore this further in the next round. But so I'll move on to our next speaker, Mandar. Also have an amazing life story, I believe, and Paula mentioned this idea of peace starts with me, and this is also the premise of your work. And what I particularly like about your work is that you are you also have these practices that allow people to connect with deep peace within them. And I think that's this something that also mentioned by Catalina explicitly when she spoke, that you really need to carry peace in your being as you bring peace to other communities. So please share your practice and maybe a little bit of your story. I think all the participants in this last session today are also talking about their own journeys, which I think are all amazing, very exciting. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pavel and Ilya. I think, firstly, congratulations to you for holding the space in this turbulent world, the time you have put. I really want to publicly acknowledge it's hard work, and thank you for doing that. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully the video and the audio will show. Can you let me know if the screen is being seen?
At least on my side,
Hello?
I can see it.
Please.
That's all good. Okay. You can also hear me, right?
Yes, we can. Please.
Okay, great. So my name is Mandar Apte. I currently live in Mumbai after more than 25 years in the United States. Perhaps I'm the only petroleum engineer in this online event. I worked in a small oil company called Shell for almost 20 years in Houston. And in my last role, I was the head of the impact investment program that I started about a decade ago. The premise was based on a life incident that I had in 2001, right after 9/11. I had been to Nigeria on a petroleum assignment, and I experienced a mob attack. A violent mob chased me and my petroleum engineering team out, and we barely escaped. So 20 years of churning, that violence, doesn't look at your skin color, doesn't look at your bank balance. And it happens anywhere, it happens anytime. So it's a deep realization that unless we create commercial business models similar to business models of violence, right? Like, for example, girl trafficking happens, there is somebody making money from it. Drugs are sold on campus, somebody's making money from it. So similar to this business of violence, can I use my corporate innovation background and look at, can we promote peace and somebody makes money? So with that genesis, I started this peace consultancy called Cities for Peace, that looks at bridging the divide, that looks at empowering people in the communities where there is violence, just like Catalina was sharing. And just like Paula was sharing, giving the empowerment to the people in the community to manage the solutions to problems that actually create violence in the first place. So that takes time because, violence stems from trauma. And trauma is something that doesn't just go away by giving a person a job, by looking at economic empowerment. Okay, that's part of the solution, but that's not enough, is where we come from. That unless the heart is healed, unless there is reconciliation from within, where the individual says, trauma stops with me, true sustainable peace perhaps doesn't happen. And that is where we will need to educate ourselves on how to manage our trauma, how to manage our negative emotions. And that is where our theory of change comes from a belief or a conviction that unless there is individual transformation, a peaceful world is not possible. So our programs help individuals heal themselves through breath and meditation practices, and enhance the social mental fabric of the individual and allow them to deepen their compassion within, which then flows outward. And the third step of our program is to allow people to design their peace solutions. Our work cuts across all demographics. We look at people who are interested in promoting peace and nonviolence and mental well-being in their own institutions and organizations. And this is based on clinically proven breathing exercises that are universal, but it takes a little time to learn them. But through research, we have shown that continued practice of these exercises can lead to sustainable inner change. So these techniques are designed by an Indian spiritual leader. His name is Sri Ravi Shankar. He is my meditation teacher as well. I've learned these techniques 20 years ago when I went through my traumatic experience, as I shared before. And they changed my life. They made me realize that inside me is peace and love. It's just a layer of trauma that surrounds me that keeps me away from that inner peace. So that's what is the cornerstone of the programs that we teach. And I'm going to show one video, 2-minute video, that was the first place where we actually tried this in the United States, in South Central Los Angeles, infested by gangs. And I hope the video now plays. If not, I'll put it on the link. So the group here is opposite gang members.
I'm an ex-gang member, so I was bred into violence. It was terrible around here, because that's what we live for, violence.
We just knew violence. When someone did something wrong to me, my reaction was to do something violent.
In collaboration with the Los Angeles Police Department and the Mayor's Office for Gang Reduction and Youth Development, the Cities for Peace initiative of the Art of Living Foundation and the International Association for Human Values facilitated the Nonviolence Ambassador Certification Program for the Harvard Park neighborhood in South Los Angeles that had experienced high rates of violence in the past. We invited LAPD police officers, community members, and former gang members who work as community intervention activists to participate in the program.
It's like the weight is being lifted off your back when you come from this experience. We carry a heavy load when we do community intervention work, and this lightens that load 100%.
Now my reaction is to forgive and say, you know what, maybe I can help him. Maybe that person is just having a bad day.
The program empowered these participants with profound breathing and meditation techniques.
I'm an ex-gang member.
So that's just a glimpse of what we do. We have now done this program in about 20 geographies worldwide, including with UN peacekeeping on a small island called Cyprus to heal the wounds of war between the Turkish Muslim community on the north of the island and the Christian community on the south of the island. So that's a little bit, I think this should be enough. We are in the next session, I would like to share how people on this call or whoever will watch can also feel that empowerment, and some modules that we have made where people can learn these exercises and then be the change so that you can actually host this in your own neighborhoods. That's our approach to scale.
Thank you, Mandar. Like I said, I hope that we'll talk about the scaling strategies in our second round. And thank you for presenting on the work you do. And to conclude the first round of the panelists, I would like to invite Katia Ramos, and apologies if I produce your name incorrectly. So Katia is a professional mediator, and we heard from Paula and the effort to bring in indigenous communities in Canada. And Katia, I understand that you do a lot of work across Brazil within the community, and also sharing your work with people from the world, from other regions, helping them learn mediation skills, though the conflict resolution approaches propagate. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So it's an honor to join you in this conversation and have the opportunity to present SECAMI, an intercultural chamber of conciliation, mediation, and arbitration. And before I start, I would like to thank Learning Planet Institute and Global Education Futures for the initiative, and Ilia for the invitation to speak about our projects and the important role they play in the construction of a social peace. The initial objective of SECAMI was to provide financial and professional independence to 7 Afghan female judges who, together with their families, took refuge in Brazil. These judges were part of the first generation of women to graduate from law school in Afghanistan during the American occupation. However, after the US withdrawal, they were exiled from their country because they were persecuted for having judged the Taliban, who had committed crimes and were now in power. The She Institute, a non-profit Brazilian civil organization, did an important job of welcoming and financially supporting these judges and their families. However, it was also necessary to provide them with an occupation similar to their original training, as well as financial independence. This gave rise to the idea that they could become mediators and arbitrators in intercultural conflicts, especially those involving the application of Sharia law. Today, these women have already completed the first stage of a training course in intercultural mediation, which was organized by SECAMI with the support of mediators and professors of recognized skill and experience from all around the world. What was really exciting about the development of this first idea is that along the way, we had many other ideas, and we realized that we could expand our activities to reach more people. Among SECAMI's objectives is to mediate conflicts involving refugees, foreigners residing in Brazil, and/or Brazilians living abroad with any counterparts acting in conflicts involving individuals or legal entities. The list of SECAMI professionals includes individuals from different cultures, people who, due to their cultural, religious, or language identity, are better able to understand the unique challenge faced by the parties involved, such as Afghan judges I have just mentioned. SECAMI also believes that it's possible to improve the lives of refugees and immigrants, enabling them to develop activities similar to those in their countries of origin, with remuneration and dignity. It's with this focus that we are developing new projects, one of which aims to offer training in mediation for refugees and immigrants so that they can act as future mediators within their communities. And another, to establish partnerships with educational institutions to provide students interested in mediation with the opportunity to gain professional experience. As part of this mission, we are working with UN Refugee Agency on a project for labor mediation with Venezuelan immigrants and their employers in the city of Brasilia in Brazil. Also, we are about to launch a branch of SECAMI in Foz do Iguaçu, a city located in the south of Brazil, known for its unique triple border, Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay, and for being home to over 90 nationalities, welcoming a significant number of immigrants every year. In other words, SECAMI emerged with the intention of giving independence and recognition to those refugee female judges, and has grown to contribute to the process of building dialogue and social peace through mediation and negotiation. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about SECAMI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this work. Earlier in the previous session today, we had amazing examples from Asia and Africa, with people mentioning that actually creating perspectives for the future is very important for, like, it's one of the key elements of creating peace in communities. And your work that restores the dignity of refugees, gives them meaningful future individually, and also connects it to refugee communities, to local population. I think it's a very beautiful example of how you can not only train the skill, but train it exactly to people that probably need it most. So thank you for doing this. And I'd like to invite all of the speakers. First of all, by the way, if any participants that are listening to this session have any questions to any of the speakers or to all of the panel, please don't hesitate to ask them in the chat, and I'll try to weave them into our conversation. But I'd like to pose the question to all of us, the question that I also hold for myself. Each of your projects is absolutely amazing. I think people listening to this session will find a lot of inspiration, would like to know more, would like to dive deeper. So thank you for presenting this. At the same time, I cannot help but realize that compared to resources that drive potential conflicts, compared to efforts that create rifts within and between our societies, unfortunately, if we see this as a kind of combat with where I think is not useful to see it as a combat, but if we see it as a kind of competition or combat for peace, it's certainly a combat lost in a way. I'm thinking about the dramatic change that we see right now, especially with the potential of new technologies that are developing at the exponential rate. And last night I had a conversation with ChatGPT, and it was a conversation about the possibility of amplifying more positive tendencies through ChatGPT in the way that it provides answers, because it's not just, let's say, an advisor, it's also kind of promoting certain perspectives. Can we use technologies like this to harmonize relationship between us, build up more empathy, build up more collective hope, meaningful new trajectories for our communities? And the one of the things that it brought to me when I asked it to be, okay, why don't you, first of all, it was very supportive, because I think ChatGPT in a way is a kind of echo chamber or a mirror. And by definition, it sort of starts with the very endorsing. Like if I give an idea, it immediately starts to support it and say, yes, yes, go for it and so on. But then I say, okay, bring me the blunt truth. And it says, yeah, the blunt truth care. And most of conversations that are held online are really amplifying the tendencies towards competition, to solving very narrow issues that people are facing. Very few of them are ever concerned about this bigger picture. They take a lot of things for granted, including the conditions of our beautiful planet, and of course peace. And Mandar, you mentioned that war is there's always an interest behind war. And I think people that drive these interests by, for example, the industrial military complex, they also underestimate this. They assume that at some point they'll gain, but the war will end. They will manage to localize it and so on. So they don't really care. They take the global peace as a granted condition. They take the effort to keep, let's say, all of us, humanity, alive as a granted condition. And then they say, yes, I'm going to profit from that. So the question to all of us is, how can we amplify this work? How can we amplify the message? And Catalina, I think I would start with you, because you also showed us how you can work systemically and how you can actually connect different stakeholders, turning these efforts into movements, multi-stakeholder collaborations that can lead towards collective outcomes. So, but the question is not only AI, but let's think. We need to exponentially promote peace culture and peace with the earth. How can we do that?
Of course, I don't have that definite answer. I'll talk a little bit about our scaling strategy and perhaps share some ideas about the potential use of technology around that. Well, first of all, as you saw from my brief description, we have a strong focus in creating strategies that allow multiplying effects. So the numbers I report are only with the first wave of replication, but we've been able to go back to projects to measure 5 years after our interventions, and teachers are still implementing the methodology that we use, that we use, and that's why we choose to train teachers to leave installed capacity. So that's one, like ensuring that everything we do is developing local capacities for people to keep implementing. Second, I wanted to share that we've also made a decision to go deeper rather than grow broader with simply replicating one program or something. And what I want to say with this is that conflicts sometimes are so intertwined and complex, deep, etc. That's why we've chosen a systemic approach, working with very diverse actors, as I showed, and we believe that is difficult to measure for sure, but we've seen it in specific experiences, that once they are involved in transformational experiences like this, when they have the chance to talk to a former enemy, when they understand the story of a former combat, when a victim and a victimary face each other and share human stories, they're touched for the rest of their lives, and they continue using their creativity to amplify this work and to develop their own initiatives. We've explored a little bit with technology, and we believe it's important to reach a wider audience. But I must say that I believe that human connection and that embodied experience is really important. COVID was, of course, a great teacher for us. We had to shift really quickly to different platforms to replicate what we were doing. It was a huge challenge, but we were able not only to fulfill all the metrics or the objectives we had for those years in Colombia. Was a long, I forgot the name. We were closed for a long time, sorry. And we managed to bring all our methodologies to technological platforms to replicate it. And I've seen some initiatives using AI that I think could be further explored and used to amplify. For example, scaling or using AI and digital platforms by delivering content in innovative and interactive formats. Tools to personalize learning experiences. We are already seeing that in other spaces of education, not necessarily peace building or education for peace, but we could explore with that, adapting the context to the needs of different communities, to provide real-time feedback to learners, etc. I think there's a whole space to explore, and I think there are already emerging initiatives around that, and I believe also around providing trauma-informed care, which I think is a big bottleneck. Like I believe that most of the initiatives that are not, or that long-term conflicts that do not evolve and we cannot solve, are very marked by trauma, by collective trauma. And I think we're not paying enough attention to that. And perhaps technology could help developing, I don't know, applications that can offer mental health support, self-care tools, or even connecting individuals to counseling services. I know there are already initiatives around this, but this could really help to amplify. And something that, I don't know, when I was thinking about this question, perhaps, of course, analyzing a conflict specifically is really important in anything we do, like power dynamics, what's happening, what's the culture, like understanding the root causes of the conflict. And perhaps technology is also an important tool to understand and even to prevent. I've seen a similar, I'm trying to make an analogy with something related to mental health, where technology can identify, but analyzing social media, etc., in young people, they can analyze like trends or even risks of committing suicide or depression or anxiety, and reaching out those young people to provide support. Something similar could be explored to detect conflict or to detect Of course, I'm not an expert. I'm just using my experience to try to brainstorm and to think a little bit outside the box. And I think I have a similar question to you, Pavel, and it's like something that really bothers me or moves me, and is why does hate and fear multiply so fast in social media, and why can't hope and other expanding emotions cannot uh, grow so fast? And I don't know, I just leave a spark for thought, and is that I perhaps if we explore with the entertainment industry, with, I don't know, aligning more people who have large voices and using technology, we could build a movement around hope, which is contagious. I'm sure we've all experienced that at an individual level. When you're close to someone who's really positive, who's hopeful, that's contagious. Why cannot we do that using technology?
Thank you, Catalina, and thank you for sharing your provocation, which I think we need to explore, and it deserves to me, deserves a conversation of its own. But maybe some of panelists will also reflect on this question as part of their statement. Just to say that we have about 15 minutes remaining in this panel, and we have 4 more speakers. So I'd like to ask each of you to try to keep to 3-4 minutes as you speak. So David, what's your thoughts on amplifying, on scaling up, on you have the powerful message. How can it reach every corner of our society?
Well, I mean, the first point, I think, is understanding the science of tipping points. There are tipping points, and if we are wise, we leverage them. Our peace game is built on, our movement is built on 2 tipping points. One is 40 million people. 40 million people is 0.5% of humanity. And that is the tipping point for shifting consciousness and new behaviors. So there's something called morphogenetic fields, which means you don't have to get everyone. You just have to get, as they sometimes call the 100th monkey effect. So as you get these new practices into play, they can begin to diffuse on their own. So that's one piece of the puzzle. A second piece of the puzzle that I have found is essential is that if you build a vision compelling enough, powerful enough, magnetic enough, people are looking for that. So they want it. And so peace on earth by 2030, we have not found anyone who does not want that. They don't believe it's possible often. When we go through the strategy, they're intrigued. And then they either decide they're going to play the peace game and decide if this is actually something that can help them in their lives. And if it does help them, then it can maybe help others. Or they at least stay open. But mostly what we've discovered is that if you're increasing individual and community well-being, you're not fighting conflict, you're creating quality of life. And when you create quality of life in communities and quality of life in an individual level, then people want it. So peace for us is not about the absence of war, it's about the increase of individual and community well-being. And these practices enable that. And so people want to learn how to be able to be in harmony with others and be harmony with themselves. I think that the work that Mandar does is really, again, increasing the value to a person in their own life, which is what we saw happen with those inner city gang members. So there's a lot of puzzle pieces here. I would say one last puzzle piece, because I want to be responsible to not take up more time than you have for us, because we have to end soon, is instilling hope in the psyche of humanity. And part of what allows hope to be in the psyche of humanity is a belief in the future. And part of what we're trying to do is instill that belief in the future. And when they see a pathway forward, and I might add, right now we're partnered with Rotary Club, we're partnered with the African Union, partnered with the US Conference of Mayors, we're partnered with major businesses. They're all seeing value, and therefore they want to scale it. So it's not that hard to imagine scaling. And therefore, when you can imagine scaling, you can see hope for the future. I'll stop there.
Thank you. A very hopeful message indeed. There is this saying which also inspires my work, is that you can bring peace first of all by imagining peace, and imagining scaling can be part of imagining peace. How do we scale that out?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing this, David. Paula, what would be your vision of how this work can be amplified?
I agree that it's imagining it every day and getting other people to imagine it. What we focus on, we amplify. And so the idea of how do we amplify around the world? I was thinking, I recently, one of the speakers at the World Mediation Summit last year was an Indigenous man who decided that Indigenous elders should be recognized in the Council of Religious Leaders. And so he went after that, and he is now the first member, and they've recognized Indigenous elders on that council. And so he's a spokesperson for that perspective. There's also the World Council of Chiefs. And so if there's a way to tap into, because all of them want to connect with others with a similar mission from all around the world. And if there's a way to connect all of those various councils, societies, us together to amplify the message, maybe that's how we connect. There was a book I read once called Waging Peace, and it was written by a man whose job it was to wage war for the American government, and was saying that he got so tired of how flaky the peace movement was, and that if they could learn how, I just made a note here, the pro-war movement's decision-making cycle, and understood the strategies of waging war and applied that to waging peace, then he felt that that would have more momentum behind it. And so I don't know if that's the case, and even the term conflict, and that I work in conflict resolution, and a lot of programs are, and I think the focus is always on that word conflict. And so can we even just start changing that language about resolution or peace building, or and coming up with terminology other than mediator, restorative justice facilitator, like what's a term we can use that would umbrella all of the people doing this kind of work, because then we become a bigger movement of a lot of people kind of falling under that same umbrella, instead of mediators trying to promote mediation, restorative justice people promoting restorative justice. So anyway, that's my little ideas from this corner of the world. Thanks, Paulo.
Thank you very much, Paulo. And yes, the idea of waging peace and this kind of reversal of the military tactics and military strategies. There is another initiative from the group that I work with, World Academy of Art and Science, that talk about peace offensive. Like there is a war offensive, and can we turn it to a peace offensive? And maybe not even an offensive, which is also about offending somebody. So language is absolutely crucial, because it sort of points to the types of thinking that we want to perpetuate in the world. Mandar, over to you. And especially because your approach is also about embodiment that Catalina was talking about. How do you see this possibly scaling up? We cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
So I would like to just go back to the insight I had in Nigeria. What I was sharing is peace and prosperity go hand in hand. And so scale up will only happen just like the drug dealer makes money while selling drugs. So I actually apply that in my workshops, in our trainings. And I do ask the people who I teach meditation practices to, the gang members, that, hey, have you sold drugs? And the answer is yes. So I tell them, that means you know how to sell. Can you help me sell peace? So that level of empowerment to tap into a skill that people have in, rolling the ball. So peace and prosperity go hand in hand. And I think Catalina referred to, like, stories. We will have to create stories that matter, entertainment that uplifts. And that will not happen unless the person that is making the story is conscious and has reached a point where, you have walked on this axis of enlightenment. And a point has come in your life where you say, another $1 million, what will I do with it? Another business class flight, what next? So we'll have to find those leaders who have reached a point of, they've reached here and now they're looking for legacy, impact, etc. Because at least I can speak on the American context. No parent today can say safely that incidents will not happen in my child's school. And when you say this, we know exactly what that incidence is. And that is how narratives and stories have embedded our consciousness, right? I never said negative incidents. Right? So that is where we will have to use the young youth power to change that narrative that, hey, I stand for peace. And you have to make it cool enough so that it's cool, I think that is where we will need the network of networks. Doing our work in silos, yeah, we can make an impact, great. But we should always keep looking for who else shall I partner with so that it's complementary. I can't solve the entire problem together, but in integrating what's in it for the business, like how can businesses like Walmart, McDonald's, United Airlines, like huge footfall. Now they are not going to change. Shell doesn't change unless you find a Mandar working inside Shell. That wants Shell to change. So that is where we will have to keep a look for who are those enlightened ones, who are those misfits. That's where I will say peace and prosperity. Like that's the only way to scale.
Thank you. And I think it also bridges to what David has pointed out in his conversation, that it is a source of well-being. So Katja, now the same question to you, especially since you started with this very small scale work of 7 judges, and now the work sort of amplifies itself. And I can see how it potentially can amplify to other parts of the world. So maybe you can share what you think. How can we scale up not only your work, but maybe the culture of peace more broadly?
Yes, because with the war between Israel, Gaza, and Lebanon, for example, Brazil, we had so many refugees in this last years, also from Venezuela, also from before IT, and of course we are thinking about ways to integrate these people. Our project in Foz do Iguaçu, for example, is to help people who came from Lebanon to have the opportunity to work and help their people, because they want to keep their culture. They have also schools there where they learn Arabic language. So the idea, even if we know that there are so many difficulties for refugees and immigrants in this moment, Brazil is a place where we are like almost 50% of the population. We are immigrants from all over the world. And we want to help me and the founders of Secami do something good to help those people to feel at home and respect their culture, their tradition, because it's essential to have peace. And I think that Brazil is kind of a model for the world because we have so many different cultures living together and we live in peace. We have other problems related to economic problems. And as you said in the beginning, social inequality, but we are very respectful for different cultures. And I think that the world needs this a lot at this time. So that's it.
Thank you. And I feel helping the intercultural dialogue that you are conducting is part of that learning that can happen and can help us amplify, let's say, the potential that is rooted in so many cultures where we can really see how they were dealing with conflicts, with tensions. And so I feel that the panel today is an experience of us learning from each other, coming from different cultural backgrounds, different situations, but all working towards this grand vision and hopeful futures. So thank you very much for sharing. Before we close, just let me show you one little slide, because this session I see as a kind of model of the tool that we are also creating exactly in the spirit of connecting between different communities, between different practices, and helping them see each other. So we are piloting the tool we call Practices for Peaceful Futures, and Atlas of Practices for Peaceful Futures. And it is an atlas in two senses. First of all, it's geographical. So we're going to show what emerges in different regions of the world, but it's also a kind of affinity space or opportunity space, which is aiming to show social change leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, educators, what can be done on their level. Because we know that civic society frequently faces challenge when the conflict is happening, when war is there, the voices of artists and educators are rarely heard. So what can be done to prevent conflicts, to make sure we change the culture more deeply? And so I hope that every practice we discuss here will be in the Atlas, but many more as well. And let's make sure we learn from each other. We co-create these tools together, and we help propagate them with whatever means are possible. Thank you very much for your amazing work. I think there was a lot of inspiration in the conversation today, a lot of insights for people who want to practice it. There were links in the chat, so you can connect with each of the speakers and their organizations if you want to know more. And yes, this is to be continued. With Learning Planet Institute, we're establishing an ongoing conversation, a learning program, and a number of initiatives that will be propagating this approach in the world with all of our partners. And thank you very much to Learning Planet for organizing this space of conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for contributing.
Kátia,
Thank you.
eu sou muito, muito feliz no Brasil.
Ah, é um lugar maravilhoso.
Muito obrigado.
Pavel, thank you for coordinating
Muchas
this.
gracias.
Thank you.
Hasta pronto.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.